Welcome to Locked On Seminoles. Today we're going to talk about Mr. Ward, Florida State recruiting, and the transfer portal. Let's go.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith, and thank you to the everydayers that make this a fantastic show. Really enjoy doing the live shows as often as possible and growing this podcast. Please hit that like button and that notification bell, subscribe, and share this podcast. And let's see the comments here in a little bit. I'm going to do about 5 to 10 minutes here in just a moment, talking about recruiting for the Noles, what's going on nationally, the transfer portal, and Ward kind of giving the overview. And then I'm going to take your questions. First off, though, this show is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/locked on and use code locked on for a first deposit match of $100. Daily fantasy sports made easy. So let's get into it. Florida State is 2 days away from their national signing day. Charles Lester and all these guys are still getting phone calls from everybody. Luke Cromahawk, you name it, somebody's going to get a phone call. I'm sure Cam Davis, Georgia won't give up on him, I'm sure. All of these things are true, but based on everything I've heard, talking to people that are around Miami, that are around Auburn, that are around Florida State, that are around Florida, etc., I've got different takes. I got somebody from up north was asking me about some stuff with Florida State and some other teams. A little bit of everything here. This is going to be a very wide-ranging show. Normally, I like it to be specific, but National Signing Day is anything but specific. It is wide-ranging, and quite frankly, it is ubiquitous. So let's just go down the list here. Florida State recruiting, I think they're going to finish with a top 5 class with some exceptions here. There's going to be somebody they're going to add. Danaeus White, the defensive lineman from North Carolina. Maybe it's a kid that they offered earlier this year that people don't even know about. This happens, and they sign on signing day that nobody really knows about, because Norvell could get a phone call and this kid's like, you know what? The coach at school X that I wanted to play for is leaving. That's part of this now. National Signing Day is on the 20th, this Wednesday. But right now is when the coaching carousel is going bonkers. That includes assistants. What do I always say? It's not what's here. It's the person wearing the polo, okay? It's not the name on the polo that says Florida State or Colorado or Texas A&M. The kids pick the coach, not the school. Like it or not, that's the way this works. So that could happen. Let's get the bad news out of the way. If you're a Noles fan, you're probably not going to like this very much at all. Barring something unforeseen, every single person I have talked to said Blunt is going to flip back to Miami. Literally every single person that I have spoken to. That means you're going to lose a 5-star D lineman. That's never friendly. That being the case, you know what? It is what it is. Danaeus White, come on down. He's the kid from North Carolina. They're trying to get him. He's a bigger bodied kid, more of a pure D tackle. It would hurt to lose Blunt for Florida State, but you know what? That's part of the recruiting process. It is what it is. KJ Bolden, my Auburn source yesterday, feels really confident, but based on the interview that he did and just talking to people in general and watching some of KJ's Twitter comments here recently, I would say that there's a pretty good chance he's going to stick with Florida State. He'd really be cutting himself at the knees if he didn't sign with the Noles after his comments on Sunday. So Florida State looks like the team to beat, but you know what? It's still recruiting, and it's 2024. Auburn and Georgia are not going to give up. Those are the other two contenders in his sweepstakes. I think Florida State looks pretty good based on just watching it, but at the same time, it's not signing day yet. We're talking about 17-year-olds here. Anything is possible. Do not discount that. The other thing here, how other guys are talking to him, and this is different than it used to be with cell phones and social media. These kids get together and talk about it, like to transfer to school, like in Florida especially, transferring to schools and creating these super teams. Well, they're trying to kind of do it in some ways with these recruiting classes. Who knows what Bolden is thinking? You know, he wants to play with some of the kids down in Florida, like Lester, etc. Maybe they really do want to do this, because that DB class, I've said it 50 times on the Locked On Seminoles podcast to all you everydayers, that is a elite DB group. That's going to be hard for him to lead, right? Don't you think? logically speaking, that's just something to kind of go into. As far as the class itself, adding other players, I think there's a lot you could go into specifically. And everybody wants to know about Jeremiah Smith. And I was talking to a couple different people about him over the last 24 hours. Here's the 2 points. Number one, who's your quarterback going to be wherever you go if you're Jeremiah Smith? This is what I posed to everybody. This is open-ended in the chat. And this is why, unfortunately, and there's no way to fix this. This is not a Florida State problem, a Miami problem, or wherever he's looking at. It's just the way the game of football works. If you're an elite receiver, you are flat out tied to the quarterback position. Who's Ohio State's quarterback? Who's Florida State's quarterback? And who's Miami's quarterback? And all of those are tied to this, that are proven college quarterbacks. They all have 0. And those are pretty much the 3. Florida's trying to, but that's a sinking ship. I refuse to believe that Jeremiah is going to Florida. When I see him put on the Florida Gators hat, I'll believe it. Until then, he's going to Ohio State, Florida State, or Miami. And that's that. And that leads to the other point here. And we're going to get into this anyway, so might as well bring it up now with Jeremiah Smith in tow. Cameron Ward's decision, in my opinion, even if it's not public, I'll explain more momentarily, is paramount in where Jeremiah wants to go. If Jeremiah is really thinking about Miami or Florida State the way I think he is, if he finds out, whether Cam calls him himself, I don't know how that works, but if Cameron Ward calls him and says, I'm going to Florida State, don't you think that would influence Jeremiah? I mean, it would give a bridge gap for some of the younger guys like Glenn and Cromwalk, everybody to get ready. And you'd also be playing with Cam Ward for a year. No, if you went to Miami, same thing. I think where Cameron Ward goes, if it's one of the 2 Florida schools, if he's truly picking between those 2, if we don't know, and myself included, he can always change his mind. That's where Jeremiah Smith could well go. If he does it and does it today or tomorrow. If he goes into signing day flat out blind on where those are going, it's a higher propensity for Jeremiah to stick with Ohio State. He just likes that coaching staff. He really likes how they develop receivers. He's told me that to my face multiple times. He's told it to many other guys that I know. He's been 100% consistent on that. And I can't blame him for liking Ohio State's passing game. They've done a lot of things for a long time. They were good. Fair enough. And he's just got a good relationship with the Buckeyes. So my opinion, where Ward goes, there's an excellent chance Jeremiah Smith follows. I just thought by now Ohio State would have their quarterback situation resolved, and they haven't. That's huge, man. You have to know what your quarterback is if you're a player like him, because unlike most freshmen who say, I'm going to go in and play early, Jeremiah is going to go in and flat out ball as a freshman somewhere. I would bet my bottom dollar on it. That kid is as motivated as any young man I've been around in many, many years. I like the change, and he's obviously very talented. Put the 2 together, Jeremiah Smith could be a big-time player from game 1 at whatever school he goes to. As far as anybody else off the top of my head, I haven't heard anything that is quote unquote earth-shattering or anything different than I didn't report in the last 72 hours or anybody else. I'm not saying I'm the end-all be-all in Florida State recruiting. I'm not even close. But I talk to enough people that are more national network guys. That's the easiest way to do it because they give them more of an objective opinion. Just as a note, anybody that covers a specific school that openly admits they're a fan, you always have to take their information with a grain of salt. It's just natural. You're going to lean that way. So I try to go with the national guys when I talk to people as a general rule. A last thought on Cameron Ward here before I open up and start talking about all these questions and stuff. Where Cameron Ward goes is very, very important, but we just don't know the timeline. He did an interview with, or someone did an interview with his dad. I forget which one, but it's very important to note there is no date that at least is public. That is hard on Miami. That is hard on Florida State. They need to know something because other quarterbacks are coming off the board. We're going to talk about that on the other side here in just a second because it is really, really important that Florida State, like anybody else, gets that resolved. It helps recruiting, and it kind of helps you with your roster, your NIL, and everything else. All right, eBay Motors. eBay Motors has passion, drive, and patience. It's what brings home the winning trophy, and it is also keeping your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You will always find exactly what you're looking for, and eBay's guaranteed fit. Your part is guaranteed to fit the ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit only available to U.S. customers. All right. Let's talk about it from a fan's perspective. I gave my opinion. What do you all think? I'm going to dive into the questions now and just kind of go from top to bottom and start reading. All right. Zombino. We already know that. I'm not sure what you're referring to. I'm sorry. I've been talking for quite a while. There's a good chance for a quarterback to show what he's got. He had a full practice rep for the Orange Bowl. You know what that may be, Stephen, but I have zero confidence in either the quarterbacks based on what I saw in each of their performances against Florida and the ACC title game. Bring on a transfer for me. Tori Sims, good morning. I believe we're getting Cam. Tori, I wonder why you say that. About Blunt, I mean, well, there could be some truth to that, but these kids change a lot. That's why I haven't talked too much about it and just wanted to reiterate it. offered Cam $1.2 million in NIL. That's a lot. I heard they offered him a hell of a lot more than that, way more than that. Zombino, what makes you think that you just woke up and thought, oh, okay, well, you guys can talk about that yourself. Tori says we're motivated to beat UGA. Well, I would hope so. The only question is, and I'll get to the opt-outs. That's something I'm gonna read through the list of players that have hit the portal, and I want people to literally to put in the opt-outs they've heard, things they think, what they think the motivation will be for certain players or not to play for Georgia. That's the back half of this show to kind of give a preview. All right, let's see. We're ready to win now, not Miami. I think Miami's going to take a pretty big step up, but at the same time, if they don't get a quarterback, they could fall flat on their face too. Florida State, same way. They both cannot afford to lose Cam Ward, and one of them's going to. Let's see. I don't think 0 is the point, because here's the deal. Zombino says, no chance we're getting Ward. We're losing too many players. That's basically his comment. I disagree with that, because if you get Ward, he's going to attract a lot of other players, like Jeremiah Smith. Somebody I mentioned a minute ago. Big-time players make big-time plays, and he's going to bring them. There's going to be kids that come to Florida State because they want to play with the quarterback. Could be an offensive tackle. Could be a running back. It could be a tight end. You know, Jaheim Bell's not going to be with the Noles. It is what it is. You blame him. You know, he wants to go to the NFL. Rodney Hill's in the portal, DJ Lundy, etc. They're losing guys, no question. But at the same time, Florida State is going to be in a scenario where they have a lot of different guys looking at the opportunity to come in to play with Cam Ward because they want to be on highlight reels. It only takes 5 to 10 plays to send off to the NFL and the scouts to see it live for them to say, you know what, we should put him on our draft board. Cam Ward gives you more chances to have those plays. He extends them. He gets the ball to you in a lot of different circumstances. And as an offense, if you're scoring a lot of points and you're an offensive lineman, it just looks good on your resume too. You're pass blocking for one of the best guys in the country. So that's my take on that. Mark, what we got here? Any word on MJJ or the Georgia linebacker? Only thing I know is they're going after him, you know, like MJJ, that if they don't get Marvin Jones Jr., man, that would be bad. Florida State's D-line recruiting on the edge has not been the greatest out of the high school ranks. So let's be honest, and I'm being kind, by Florida State. It hasn't even touched what it should be over the last, say, 5 to 8 years. It really hasn't. They've had a few guys, but it hasn't. And Marvin was one of the guys they missed on that was really sad when they did. He went to UGA, didn't work out. Now he's in the portal. He's visited. I would think Florida State would get him, but I'm sure he's going to have other opportunities. And this comes back to my discussion the other day. NIL. I don't know Marvin. I don't know his scenario. But I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that he wants to be compensated because he's a highly rated player at a premium position. How do you balance that? I'm not just saying like somebody give me the answer, but how do you balance that? It's a really important point because if you give him something and he hasn't played for Florida State, I don't mean give him something, like give him a chunk. How does that impact other guys? So it's not just getting the player, it's keeping your roster intact without it being pissed off. It's not easy. This is going to be the number one topic for me between now and all the way to August next year. How do teams manage their roster with NIL in the factor? You know how they say in equations in math, you want to have opportunities where you get all the like variables on this side and the others on the other side. With this scenario, NIL, it's not on one or the other because it's constantly bouncing back and forth because guys are in the portal mad about it or seeking more of it. Even if they did want to leave, sometimes guys know they can go to another institution and make another 50, 100K, and they're trying to take care of themselves and their family. It's not a balanced equation. Just something to think about. All right. Zambino, I've been hearing rumors of Kai flipping. Look, I mean, if Kai Bates flips, it is what it is. I've met with that kid, been around him numerous times. Great guy. If he goes somewhere else, it is what it is. I haven't heard a single word. If Zambino has the goods on it, lay it on us. I have not heard anything about that. Andy Becker. I saw something that Cam had over 30 lost fumbles so far. Thoughts and concerns? That's poor ball placement in the pocket, like not being close enough to your chest, not having good hand placement, whatever. And he quite honestly holds on to the ball a lot because he's trying to make big plays down the field. Ben Roethlisberger used to do that, but he was a hulking man. He could hold on to the ball a little easier, even though he got hit by NFL guys. But it is something Cam Ward needs to improve upon. He's got a bunch of fumbles. He needs to do better. Let's see here. Stephen Bland. I think DJU has something to prove and will be 100% motivated and committed to his last season. Stephen, that is actually something that's very true. Here's the deal. DJU has a howitzer for an arm. Huge arm. He played at St. John Bosco, was the number one player, goes out and plays for Clemson, doesn't make it happen, has a decent year at Oregon State, but he's not where I would like him to be completion percentage-wise. He was 57%, even though Jonathan Smith was his head coach, a former Oregon State Beaver quarterback himself, and somebody who's quite frankly one of the top 10 or so coaches, I would say, in college football. Being a quarterback coach is one of the reasons I rank him there. Conservatively, top 15. He's at Michigan State now. That gives me pause, but motivation is something that's different at the collegiate level because you're dealing with young men. Very important. Could DJU come in and have a big year for Florida State, especially in being, this quote unquote clutch? Absolutely. He was at Florida State this weekend as well. I think he's in a holding pattern, and we can talk about this. I'll just throw it out to the chat here. If you want to comment, look, if you wait around on Ward and for whatever reason, he wants to wait a week, maybe all the way to like the 30th of this month, which would be unfortunate for all parties involved, you could lose everybody and then not get him. That would not be good for the Noles. It is what it is. Florida State has to play the Cam Ward sweepstakes very, very carefully. I said it a couple of times on shows prior to this one. Him making an early decision is huge. It's not fair to the other kids, unfortunately, because if he's the number one guy and he appears to be for Florida State and Miami, they want to know on him before they go on to somebody else. But everybody's on a time crunch because these other players that they're going after at the quarterback position, they've got opportunities at school X, Y, and Z beyond Florida State, beyond Miami, etc. Will Howard visited Miami. And then they had Cam Ward. Howard just went out to SC. It looks like he's going to go to SC now. Miami might be left holding the bag too, because if Cam goes to Florida State, who they getting? I mean, somebody's going to lose here. Somebody's going to lose real bad. I just don't know who it is. I have no clue where Cam Ward's going. But it is a fascinating discussion point. Tori Sims, FSU has a plan. Trust that. I'm not saying they don't have a plan. Here's the deal. There's a key word, leverage. They have zero. They have zero. Cam Ward is the player. This is the one time players have leverage on coaches, and they use it. I'm saying I trust Norvell. He's a very good coach. He's organized the program with all of those things. He doesn't have any leverage here. He can give the guy an ultimatum. I don't think that's going to work real well. But at some point, I understand if he did too. It's a lose-lose if you're Norvell, if you're Cristobal, anybody that Cam's talking to, because you tick him off, you're out of the running. Mark Dorfman, good insight. Thank you. You're more than welcome. This is fun right now because the speculation part is real, right? Like, how do you know what Cam Ward's going to do? You don't. How do you know what his criteria is? We really don't. Do we know the specifics of NIL? I sure as heck don't. The number I heard from Miami was pretty big. I don't know what FSU has offered him. I don't know what they've told him about which recruits are coming or what transfer receiver, and that's something else we need to talk about. Do we think that Florida State gets another Cam Coleman kind of guy, or Keon Coleman, kind of guy if they get Ward? I think there's a better chance of that. And let me be clear, that doesn't mean it's somebody in the portal right now. If Ward comes to Tallahassee, who's to say a good receiver, and I have no idea who it would be, on another school, maybe it's an SEC school, maybe it's a Big Ten, transfers to Florida State. It happened last year from the Big Ten. Keon Coleman could have just stayed at Michigan State and went to the NFL. He decided to come to Florida State and play with Jordan Travis. Do you blame him? I mean, it worked out pretty well for Keon. I would say that's a hell of an idea. Just something to consider. Mark Dorfman, everybody seems to think DJ is a consolation prize. Think he's more mature and wants it more. Coach Mike Norvell can scheme around his strengths. I've thought a lot about this, and I agree with that. I think it really comes down with DJU. What are your expectations? That's my take on it. It's just something to kind of consider. And I'm not saying that it's a bad thing, but at the same time, you're looking at a player that hit 57% last year because he takes more shots down the field. Florida State does like to do that. If they could fix just a few things, and we'll talk about that here in just a second, maybe they could get a situation where, I don't know, they could hit the home run and elevate his passing percentage a little higher. We're going to talk about that here in just 1 second. All right, now let's talk a little bit about the opportunities for Florida State. Let's say they got DJU. This is a fun topic. How would you change your offense? He can run, just for those of you who haven't seen him that much, but he's not a wiggle in and out of traffic kind of guy. He's more like a dump truck that's trying to break your glass just by breathing on it, okay? He's a big man. He's 250. Tackling him would not be a good time. But how many times do you want your quarterback just banging up his arms, his hands, his fingers, all that, just being tackled? There's always the risk of greater injury, but I'm just talking about the game-to-game. When shoulders get banged up, etc., your elbows inflamed, whatever, it's harder to be an accurate quarterback. Can he fit into Norvell's scheme? And can Norvell adapt to the point, let's say DJ did, he tweaks his ankle, but he can play. He's your quarterback. Do you want him in the game with Norvell, and can he, quote unquote, develop a game plan against a top-notch team? Let's say Clemson next year, or let's say Florida, let's say Miami, whatever it is, pick your school, where DJ is going to run twice. It's going to be 2 broken plays. They're going to call 0 quarterback run plays, which goes completely against what Norvell does. Can he do that with DJU? Not Jordan Travis, because when Jordan took off, look, everybody stopped. That's a game breaker. I mean, he could have played wide receiver in a heartbeat. DJU's not doing that. He can play tight end maybe, but he is not a wide receiver. Could Norvell do that? I'm asking that openly because I don't know. I didn't follow Mike Norvell or his staff prior to him coming to Tallahassee. I really don't know. I've never went back and watched a lot of it. I saw a few of the games, like when he was in Memphis, whatever, but that's no big deal to me. I need to see it, no offense, against Power 5 defenses. Because you can scheme differently at the non-Power 5 level because the D linemen aren't even in the same stratosphere. That's the difference. Let's see here. Looking at DJ's interview yesterday, he's on FSU, so go for it. I think he likes Florida State a lot too. I agree. He seemed pretty comfortable. But I think he's in a holding pattern, if I was to guess, before anybody asks. hey, we're waiting on Cam. We'll let you know on X. I'm guessing they got to know something the next day or so, today or tomorrow. I'd want to know at the latest Wednesday morning, and that's really pushing it. I had originally said I'd wanted to know by Monday night, so that's today. Because I'd want to tell Jeremiah Smith, hey, just so you know, we are or we are not, whether it's public or not, signing Cam Ward. If I was Miami, I'd want the same thing. It's just fair to all parties involved. It has nothing to do with advantage. It's just like, so everybody knows this is what the deal is. It's very unique. Torrey Norvell had a big quarterback in Memphis, so his playbook works for DJ. Thank you for letting me know that. If they had a quarterback that was a pocket kid that could just throw from the pocket over and over and over again, then that's a different deal. I haven't seen it. Again, I didn't study that. That's, just the deal with me covering Power 5. You don't have time to go look at all this other stuff. Having said that, here's the deal. You're going to have to do it at some point because guys get banged up. Even if you are just a pure, like Rich Rodriguez, who doesn't use a lot of pocket quarterbacks, he did do that at one point at Tulane. He had a year where his quarterback, who ended up with the Buccaneers, he ended up throwing for a ton of yards. At Tulane, they were just a throw-it offense. He adapted. Good for him. Sometimes you got to do that. I think it would be unique to see that. And it'd be great for DJ. I mean, he seems like a pretty good kid. If he comes to Florida State, maybe he goes out and throws for 2,800 yards, 25 touchdowns, and only has 4 picks, and his completion percentage goes up to 62%. Doesn't sound like a big deal, but that one extra throw, especially as much as DJ throws the ball down the field and he likes to go deep, that would be huge because you could be hitting a very large chunk play at a higher rate than other teams, more proficiency, which opens your running game. And Wardaway knows Florida State does a really good job with their run game, with their scheme and their design. That I am confident with. And that also opens up Florida State's also just as equally good screen game. I think DJU is a very unique piece. I don't think that anybody's going to doubt that. So just my take. I'm going to go in now. We can, by all means, keep bringing that up. I'm just going to read off a few of the kids that are in the portal from Florida State. I want people to discuss it however they see fit. I want people to say, hey, this is good, this is bad, this is what I've heard. Here's somebody else. This is just an open-ended op-ed for anybody right now in the chat. Anybody wants to leave a question on YouTube after this, I'm going to post this show later. More than happy to do so. I really kind of want just opinions. There is no one answer here. This is a list that I'm reading off, and I'm probably going to miss somebody because these things, in the last 10 minutes, somebody might have entered the portal while I'm doing this live show. It may not have even hit the airways, but in 10 more minutes, it might be. That is the nature, as they say, of the transfer portal. The one thing that I will say that I'm concerned about a lot more based on this morning when I put it all together, what in the world is going on with Florida State and O-line? Bless Harris is going to TCU. He's announced. Good for him. Good guy. Had him on the show once. Really good guy. But he's not the only guy that's an offensive lineman that's hitting the portal. Daughtry Richardson, the kid from Central, he was a redshirt freshman. He is in the portal. I don't know what's going on. I honestly don't. At the same time, Quayshawn Sapp, another kid. He's from Georgia. He's from Leesburg, right down the road from where Cam Davis is. He's in the portal. That's 3 O-linemen. Based on what I just saw this season, Florida State is not in a position to lose quality offensive linemen. They're just not. And on top of it, speaking of offensive linemen, because he's so big, Marcuston Douglas is in the portal. It looks like he's going to go to Arizona State based on the rumors, but that's another big body. Obviously, A.J. Duffy, C.J. Campbell, they're in the portal. Winston Wright, I don't know what happened there with Florida State, but that didn't go well. A.J. Duffy's going to San Diego State, it looks like. The Rodney Hill situation is bunk. I don't know what's going on with that, but it's very awkward. Sounds like DJ Lundy is going to go. I haven't heard if that's official, but that's what I've heard. Who am I missing? Who am I missing on the portal here? Let me see if I can find another list. I'm really concerned though about the offensive line. I'll get back into the questions in 1 second. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anybody. And I'm just searching as we go along, as they say, because this is very, very concerning, because Florida State's probably their biggest issue the last 4 years at least, maybe even decade. You'd have to say it's offensive line. They can't afford to lose this many, and it is what it is, man. It's tough. So, all right, let's see. Florida State. Yeah, I mean, Bless Harris. Yeah, those are the guys. But I'm really concerned about that. I would say afterwards, they're pretty darn good in the secondary. They need another defensive lineman. We already talked about it, Marvin Jones Jr. If they don't get him, that's a problem. And they also need to get somebody, just from a depth perspective, another quality defensive lineman on the interior, maybe, that can help you. You never have enough of those guys. It's just my opinion, but they're hard to come by. You got to get them. It wouldn't hurt to get another gadget guy, kind of like Jaheim. I mean, he was a freak. What a weapon he was. But that looks like what's available publicly to me. So let's see what else we got here. If Tate decides to not stick around, do we take 2 portal quarterbacks? Zombino, that is a hell of a question. Let me think about that for a second. I want to repeat that. If Tate decides, Tate Rodemaker, not to stick around, do we take 2 portal quarterbacks? Well, let me pose this question back to you as my answer. I'm not trying to get too philosophical here, but look at it this way. If you get a really good quarterback, whether it's DJ or whether it is somebody else, maybe it's KMA, whatever happens, you get a veteran this next year. We'll just leave it at veteran. 1-year guy. And Cam and DJ both fit the 1-year guy. You're going to have multiple quarterbacks that are underclassmen. You have some, you got Brock and you would have Luke. If you bring in somebody else, this is your question. Do you just go developmental, or are you going to go all in? Because I'll give you a guy. Malachi from University of Southern California is in the portal. He was top 5 quarterback by pretty much everybody. Get the kid's last name off the top of my head, but Elite 11 kid, I saw him. He's a gunslinger type. He's a Caleb Williams type. He just entered the portal, or is going to be. I don't know if the paperwork's done yet. Another LA kid like DJ, but he's got 4 years of eligibility. I don't think he played more than a couple of games. I think he still got 4. Would you risk screwing up your quarterback depth chart with the guys you recruited that are more local kids to go get him? Or what about Malik Murphy? I think he would be a redshirt sophomore next year, if I remember right. It depends on the guy. Like if you're talking about just a good player that's played a little bit, that was a good backup that's going to be a 5th-year senior, like the kid you get, and he played at the MAC level or something, I'm okay with it because they can help the younger guys. I'm all for that. But if you're going to run off kids, I would probably lean no. At some point, you got to play your own quarterbacks. DJ Ferg, man, you don't know what you're talking about. Regarding what? Yeah, I'd like to know that. Go ahead and challenge me on that all along. What would I not know? This is all I do every day, brother. We need defensive tackles, edge rushers, linebackers. What's going on with Coach Higgins? Is he retiring? Something happened this morning. I have not read anything. That's from Derek Leith. Have at it. If there's something going on with Higgins, that's a big deal. He's been at Florida State since the 80s in some capacity, basically. That would be very big news. I mean, he could retire. I don't know. I have not heard anything. Zombino, the kid from SC. Yeah, he's a really good athlete. I just don't know. Do you risk losing the other guy? Like, locker room is important. If those kids in that locker room think you're just willing to take in anybody willy-nilly from any other region of the country, remember, this is a Deep South program. Malachi's from LA, one of the suburban LA schools. If you bring him in, you'd have to know for sure, and I don't really know the kid. I've just said hi to him in passing. I don't know him at all, that he's going to fit in your locker room. That's tough, man. Louisville been hitting some good players. Remember, we were talking about Ja'Cory Brooks. Yep. If they get Ja'Cory Brooks, He's a kid from Booker T. Washington out of Miami that was an elite recruit, had a huge sophomore year for Bama, or at least really close to it. And then he just fell off the map this year as a junior. Louisville's portal class is legit so far. Matter of fact, I'm curious. Let me see what I can find on Louisville. Let's see what the Louisville Cardinals have. They've got a lot of NIL money. I don't know who their backer is or if they've got a couple of them. They straight up have a lot of opportunity via NIL. Let me see what we got. I haven't checked this in a couple of days, but Brooks is the kid that's rumored there. Let's see. They've got a defensive lineman that was at FIU. They've got a kid from, I think it's Northern Illinois, that's an interior offensive lineman. They got Brooks. Corey Thornton from UCF. He's another kid from Miami. They got a safety that is going to West Virginia, so they lost him. They've got another kid that's entered the portal that I don't think really played much. And they got a tight end coming in from Ball State. They got the corner that they lost, Marquise Groves Killebrew. That's an interesting kid. He was very highly rated out of high school. The key there is that they need, in their offense, they need playmakers at receiver. Let's see here. K-Jack. 11 guys. That's a lot, man. Louisville's active. They're not going to play around. They've got a real head coach. Louisville's going to be a factor in the Atlantic Coast Conference for quite a while. Derek Leith, is he recruiting? Are you satisfied? Are you talking about Norvell? Because, I mean, they've been really active in recruiting. Satisfied means that the class is done. You can look at everything. Let me start with that. Derek's asking, do I like where the recruiting class stands, I guess? I would think that you really can't bitch about compared to where Florida State was even 24 months ago, even 12 months ago. They've come a long way in recruiting. They're getting in and winning recruiting battles against Georgia, against Florida, against Miami, against Auburn, against Alabama, head-to-head for Florida, Georgia, Alabama kids. That's all you can ask because those are the programs you got to win battles against. They're doing that. Now they just need more balance. Again, O-line recruiting, I've bitched about this forever, and I will not stop. Florida State will not be a consistent football program until the following statement is graded 100% true. Florida State, fill in the blank. Florida State's O-line recruiting over the last 5 years is what to you? Just, think about it yourself. You want to comment on the chat, fire away. I say it's subpar. You're not winning national titles with subpar O-line recruiting. If you put up the board for Georgia, for Bama, for Notre Dame, for Ohio State, for Michigan, their O-line recruiting, now Miami's too. Like Miami's O-line recruiting is legit. If you put them on that list too, Penn State, and put it up against Florida State's over the last 5 years, it is a complete smackdown. That's just reality. Until Florida State fixes that, they will not be consistent. They obviously did well in the portal, and that's great. That is not a sustainable model, in my opinion, long term. Tori Sims, I think the problem I see with our quarterback room is they're more friendly with each other than competing, just saying you have to push each other replaced by portal. That's where we are now. Sorry. It could be. A lot of quarterbacks get along, but sometimes, like famously, some of the quarterbacks in the NFL talked about they didn't really help the other guy in their room because they're competing against them. Steve Young and Joe Montana didn't get along because they competed against each other. Well, that's fine. It's just natural. K-Jack, I like how Norvell likes to have the most or the last visit with these commits so he can see what it is before it's too late. The last visit is something Bobby Bowden actually used to do, and it was very effective. Very effective. Getting your face in front of a young man right before National Signing Day, like this past weekend, doesn't matter the program, is a huge, huge factor. And quite honestly, I think it's a scenario that a lot of teams try to do, but you can only have one that gets in there and makes that happen. Trying to think. I would say that Florida State, out of the elite kids under the Bowden regime, I would go I would go 25% of their 5 stars they got in the last 5 days, like solidified. That's just my opinion. It's not easy, but at the same time, you've got to do something there to make it work. You can't just have an in-home. You got to have a plan. Bowden always had a plan, and they did a great job of selling the family what they could do for them spiritually, academically, and on the field. I think Bowden is one of the greatest ever to do it. I don't know Norvell's system and all that. I haven't had a chance to study him as long, but I think it's a really important thing to talk about. So nothing is a sustainable model in the day and age of college football. Stephen Bland. That it might be one of the truest statements of the day. Matter of fact, that's post of the day until otherwise proven. Stephen, that is a good point. There isn't much sustainability, is there? Facts. Yeah. Agree with your statement. Defense also needs help as well. Linebacker, bro. We talked about it at length. I kind of went off on linebacker the other day. Look. They got problems at linebacker because that's a spot where you get a lot of attrition. You need to rotate a lot of guys, traditionally speaking, and it's no different right now. You need somebody in the middle of your defense with experience to call out what's going on, to set guys in the right spots, to move defensive linemen to the right gap, all of that. They're not going to have that next year that's a returning player that has a lot of playing time. They're not. Florida State needs to figure it out. They need at minimum 2 guys from the portal. And they got a couple of really good players coming in. But they're still not where they need to be. They're just not. Torrey, O-line recruiting has been weak. We have to improve big time and do it now. 1,000,000%. Florida State's O-line recruiting, based on the history of the program, has never been its strength per se, but they've just missed so many times. And now, like Sapp's in the portal, Daughtry's in the portal. That is not good. You want guys that you spent 2 years with on their 3rd year is kind of the expectation of something to happen. For whatever reason, they're out. I don't know what it is. I didn't hear anything about them. I just saw they're in the portal. I'm like, what? You don't really hear O-line backup, information. But you're not going to find out anything now. Bowden is the greatest. He was a really good man. Zombino. I think we have a good shot at McCray. If Bolden signs with FSU, pure speculation, no. McCray, I've told somebody, when was it? Well, it was last night, talking to one of my buddies. I have no idea. Great kid. I've only interviewed him once, been around him once. Really competitive guy, but really smart. Keeps things close to the vest. He's been to Florida State and Auburn here recently. I mean, freaking Florida, where he's quote unquote committed. Did they sign? Somebody put in the chat if this is true. I haven't looked this morning. Maybe I missed it over the weekend. Did Florida hire a defensive line coach? Yay or nay? How the hell do you go into National Signing Day? Get McCray if you ain't got a D-line coach. By the way, I think Florida might get Joey Slackman, the kid from Penn, is what I heard. Brandon Olson that runs Locked On Gators told me that. And I'm like, how in the after that awful defense for Florida, how are they getting anybody on defense? I don't understand that. Again, I've said this before too. Florida's a program that should never struggle winning or recruiting. It's not that hard to get kids there. They have found a way to screw it up over and over again. So real quick here, before I go any further and take any more questions, I want to make a basic statement that we're going to see over the next week. This is my projection. It's just something kind of random, like I anointed in the beginning of the show, which normally I like to do this, but that's the nature of what's going on. Between now and about the 26th, right after Christmas, there'll be a few guys mentioned it. You're going to have somebody else transfer. You're probably going to get somebody. Forget the Cam Ward situation. We'll come back to that in a moment. You're probably going to have some randomness. Do not be surprised by anybody that either comes to Florida State or leaves. And whatever you do, don't say, well, what is he doing? NIL is probably going to be a large factor with many of these kids. A lot of them are getting bunk information, if you know what I mean. Oh, you should go in the portal. I can help you get this much NIL. Really? Idiots are trying to help some of these players, not just Florida State, at a lot of different schools, basically street agents and people that have no business. They're not lawyers. They're not business professionals. They're just flat out not good people because they're looking out for their own interest in lying to young men in college football. Again, it could be FCS kid, FBS, Power 5, non-Power 5. You're going to see idiots influence kids, and we're going to have the backstory 5 years later on some 30 for 30 that ESPN does or whatever about this era right now, like the last year or so. There's going to be a 30 for 30 on this. I guarantee it, about the idiots trying to get people to jump in the portal. Florida State and everybody loses when morons are brought into this, and I hope a lot of them end up being prosecuted and spend time in jail with Bubba. Figure out what I mean by that. Does anybody have any feel for what's going on? I have not checked at all on this before I even ask this question. If somebody has a question they'd like to pose specifically, they can go ahead too. But is anybody got a feel for which players the University of Georgia already has that have A, opted out, or B, have announced for the NFL draft already? I assume there's zero chance Brock Bowers is playing. He'd be, based on how things work today, the exception, not the rule. And I would applaud him if he wanted to play, by all means. Represent the school that you had decided to attend. But if it's not Brock Bowers, I'd be shocked. But one or two of the offensive linemen, I would have figured, because Georgia's always got good O-linemen, maybe one of the defensive players. Does anybody know? Because I think that's a really big part of that would be, can you attack a team a little differently? So nobody said anything yet. Well, if Georgia's that ironclad and they're not losing guys and Florida State is, that does not bode well for Florida State. I mean, for the love of God, if Brock Bowers does not play in this game, it would be the expectation. If he does, you got to be kidding me. I mean, right. You know what I mean? Like, let me check here. Cause like, that would be just transfers. Wow. I'm surprised and more power to him. I mean, that's just going against the grain. That's it. That's all I'm saying. It's not normal to have a scenario where you have a team that, quite honestly, they just expect to be in the playoff every year. They don't make it. You still have several draft eligible juniors, and they play in the bowl game? When has that happened in the last 3 years? For any team, for any conference, for any bowl. At least it's the Orange Bowl, and it's a bigger bowl. But these guys are used to playing in the national title. They won it the last 2 years. That does not make any sense to me. Jerry Astinza, do you think Norvell and his staff are the best college football with finding underrated talent, developing the players to the highest levels? You know what? That's a really good question because I think it's a two-part answer. Number one, it starts with developing a plan on what you're looking for in recruiting, transfer portal, JUCO, the whole thing. Go out and get them and then develop them. They find the fit for what they want to do and then they develop it. So it's two parts. They've done a tremendous job. The DB they brought in from Mississippi, I forget his name, the freshman, somebody was at Jones or whatever. Kids like that, nobody else wanted. Florida State brought them in and they played. Kids that make a difference across the board. Like some people may not have been all that gung-ho about Jordan Travis. I know I wasn't. 2021, I'm like, I don't know about this. Look how he turned out. They have developed at an elite level. Quarterback stands out. That's easy. Look at the defense. They have changed that defense completely in the last couple of years. Part of it's talent because defense is more important to have talent than O. You can scheme your way to points, but defensively, you need to turn loose the hunting dogs to get after it at corner and D-line in particular. That's talent. Now, there's technique, but that's still more of a recruiting deal. But they've schemed themselves into a pretty good situation because that Louisville game, I'm telling you, I mentioned this about a week or so ago. They gave up like 181 yards or something like that to Louisville. That was as good a defensive performance from one team in any college football game in 2023. I am convinced. Run gap fits, tackling, being consistent, gang tackling, not allowing escape routes for the quarterback without him getting blasted shortly thereafter. He was a semi-mobile kid, but he didn't have many places to go. And then kind of finished it at the end, even though the offense was struggling. Remember that sack that Fisk had? All of those things are development, mentally, the effort, position, playing together, team, all of that. Jerry, you have a great point. Florida State might have done the best job in the last 3 years at taking, 3-star, lower-star kids like Jared Verse, he played at Albany. You had to prepare his mind to take that step up. And then he had a great year, and you convinced him to come back for another. That was not easy. It'd be hard to go against Florida State as number one there, brother. Torrey Sims, what is Atkins doing to run off his linemen? Look, man, I don't know if that's NIL. I don't know those kids in that capacity. And we don't have access as media to go, talk to current players. It's a different deal with the portal. I'm guessing just like you. But I understand. Maybe the challenge is too much for them. I don't know. It could be. Torrey, again, what is Atkins doing to run off these linemen? They're in a tough spot because now, in my opinion, because you need numbers on O-line to run scout team to prepare your defense, it's a very coordinated effort with a lot of players. Like a low number for O-linemen going into fall camp that are healthy is 12. So you need 14 or 15 because there's always somebody either redshirting that's coming off a knee surgery or a shoulder. 14 is really as low as you need to go. They're going to have to find a way to get a couple offensive linemen in the portal now, maybe 3. It depends on your perspective. They only know, the staff that is, how far along some of those underclassmen that we really don't know much about. They see them in practice. They see their weight room numbers. They know their GPAs. They know their attitude in the locker room, all those things. But I think it's at least 2. And that's hard because I was looking at the O-line portal names a couple of days ago, and I'm like, I ran into an offensive line coach that I respect on the recruiting trail recently, and it was right before the portal had opened, and I just random in conversation, I said to him, is there anybody in the portal you're looking at? And he just turned to look at me and goes, not right now. Maybe on Monday when it opens, but not right now. He just kind of gave me the, this is terrible look. Since then, more guys have got in, but I was like, oof. And this is a guy, I'll leave out the names and all that, but he's like, no. And I know they're losing a couple guys at his school. And I'm like high level guys. And I was like, oh boy. Carla Jenkins, Alabama, Bryce Young and Will Anderson played in last year's New Year Bowl. Well, I give them credit. That is random as hell. Bama is a really weird deal now. I give Saban a lot of credit, but did Bryce play in that game? Did Will play in that game? I don't remember. My memory is atrocious. I will grant you that, but it is pretty unlikely to see a lot of Georgia kids playing this game against Florida State. Yeah, Torrey, that is a great point. I'll give Deion some credit. He's gotten O-line going, but how good are they? I don't know much about the kids until their O-line this year was bad. I did the Locked on Buffs podcast recently, and the guy that covers them close, he's like, man, they had probably the worst O-line in Power 5. I'm like, man, that is a smackdown. So it's something to think about. O-line talent will increase after spring. That is from Kerry Kimbler. It could, but what are you basing that on? Here's why I bring that up. We're looking at a scenario where Florida State, like anybody else, is going to be looking for O-line. One of my buddies covers Notre Dame. They're definitely looking for a tackle, and that's a school that rarely needs O-linemen. Like they put out, Joe Alt's going to be a first-round pick this year, but that's why they're losing both their tackles early. That's hard. But even if Notre Dame's looking, that just shows you what the desire is, especially for tackles. Iowa, Wisconsin, Notre Dame, Michigan, some of those Midwest schools, they usually do a pretty good job with it. Then, of course, there's Bama and Georgia. Beyond that, most schools are looking for them, but if you start getting those schools looking at it too, it's not good. The numbers are going to be really, really pushed back because there's so much competition. I think that Florida State needs to. If somebody they know is going to enter the portal that's not in now, that would be great. But just going on what I see, if somebody wants to add to this, who's the player or players that are in the portal right now that are, it could be interior O-line or a tackle, I don't care, that you consider to be upper echelon potential NFL players? Anybody. Throw it in. I haven't checked the last couple of days, I will grant you, but I didn't see anybody who went, yeah, that dude, straight up, he's a first or second round pick 1 year at school X, going to the league. There just aren't many. I think this could be Florida State's downfall again next year because let's be honest, I know they had injuries this year. O-line wasn't great, even with a bunch of experience. They did not reach expectations. Now you're losing guys like Bless Harris. I don't think Mo's coming back, if I remember correctly. Like, you're going to lose a few guys. Why would I think they're going to be better next year? And they're losing depth too. That's hard. That's really hard. Let's talk about Cam Ward here a second and how that could also help this situation. I mentioned it towards the top of the show. Cam Ward comes to School X, let's say it's Florida State. Wouldn't you think it would be pretty transparent that an offensive tackle, again, whether that individual is in or not in the portal yet, for them to come to Florida State, that is the one thing that like people don't realize. Quarterback has that much power. Like it or not, it just does. Something to think about. I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm just saying that's kind of how the way the ball bounces, and that's the way it rolls. It is what it is. I'm also very sure of the following. Cam Ward, if he comes to Florida State, he's going to make up for some things because with his athleticism, unlike DJ, he's a good athlete. He's going to make some guys miss and create fewer sacks for the other team. He's going to make guys miss and look bad. So those things are really, really important. All right. Kerry Kimball, I based that statement on teams with talent, with depth, come to the conclusion that they will not start. Yeah. Look, I mean, if you have a good roster and you've got backups that are leaving, that's part of it. But how many of these guys didn't think they were going to play next year for Florida State, like Dr. Richardson? He's the kid from Central that's a redshirt freshman right now. They weren't great up front. Like what? I honestly, like, what is going on? Why are so many guys leaving? I don't know. Bless Harris, by the way, again, TCU. But I don't know if there's anybody out there, anybody that I'm confident with. Let me pull up O-line because the last that I had checked, and I'm not trying to pick, maybe somebody entered today. Maybe I will be just completely, unequivocally shocked, and there will be at least two. I'm going to be greedy. There will be two guys that are going to jump in the portal either today or already have. It'd be even better. That are going to jump in the portal that are offensive linemen, preferably one of them playing center and one of them being a left tackle. I know I'm being really, really picky, but at the same time, let's be honest, that's the most important thing. If that's the thing, like who are these guys that are so great? So I don't see it. Looking at the numbers now, there's an offensive tackle named Aaron Parks that just jumped in the portal from Oklahoma. That was a pretty highly recruited kid. He just got in the portal a couple of days ago. That could be something to monitor. That could be a possibility. And that's a big kid too. So that's a possibility. Georgia Tech lost a couple offensive linemen, not really shocking. SC lost a kid that's probably not that good, but none of these guys are like super highly rated, really. Caden Green jumped in the portal from Oklahoma. So it sounds like Oklahoma's got more problems than what Florida State does. A big name kid from Georgia's in the portal. They just got so many guys that doesn't shock me, but he hadn't played. A kid that's a backup for Notre Dame, not that good. There's nobody here that's already been a proven guy. Some highly rated kids, but literally nobody proven that I'm seeing. So it's a concern. Thomas Smith, we will find out tomorrow when practice is open on who is in and out for the bowl. The O-line played one game together as the starters. Yeah, this year just didn't work out for Florida State's O-line. It's unfortunate. They had over 200 career starts on their depth chart. It's insane, but it just didn't work. They never meshed because guys ran in and out of the lineup. Thomas is 100% correct. That sucks, but it's true. All right. DJ just doesn't fit Norvell's scheme, and with that O-line will be tough to watch. I think DJ could do pretty well, but it is an adjusted scheme. I talked about this earlier, and I'll just rehash in 10 seconds. They've done it before, according to what somebody else said with Memphis, and that's fine. But DJ also has to become more accurate. Does he take the coaching? That's the question. If DJ takes the coaching, Florida State's offense could be pretty good. Maybe not what it was with Jordan Travis, but still pretty good. K-Jack the Great. They say Atkinson, keep it 100 with those kids instead of trying to be buddy-buddy. Well, that's typical O-line coaches. They're pretty gruff, pretty hard on guys as a general rule. You know what? Sometimes you got to be that way. Sometimes you got to really get on kids. Sometimes you don't. I had an O-line coach tell me a long time ago, the really good ones, they want it tough. They want it that way. They want to excel long-term, and they accept that hard coaching. And I think that's interesting because the guys that don't generally are the ones that don't play in this thing they call the National Football League. All right. I'm gonna open it up for anybody here and then kind of close up this particular podcast, and I'll split it up into two shows if you want to watch it in smaller segments later, around 30 minutes apiece. Here's the deal. Florida State, to summarize this whole show, I think Jeremiah Smith is connected to Cam Ward in some way, shape, or form. He could go to the school that Cam Ward signs with. Ohio State not having a quarterback, as of right now, to me, is goofy. Maybe they have something behind the scenes that I don't know about. Again, I have no idea. But if I'm him, I'd be concerned about it because they had their starting quarterback jump in the portal. And by the way, Kyle McCord's going to Syracuse, of all places. And now they're in a scenario where they don't know who their QB is going to be. Florida State certainly doesn't, and Miami doesn't. That puts a lot of pressure on Jeremiah. We will all find out on Wednesday. But if Cam Ward makes a decision, even if it's just privately and Jeremiah knows about it, I personally believe it influences him. Maybe I'm wrong. Also, there are a lot of things going on with KJ Bolden. I think he's going to stick with Florida State based on what I saw, but it wasn't a lock. He didn't look super comfortable during that interview, but KJ's kind of a shy kid. Maybe I'm wrong, but I've kind of went back and forth with this. I think he's going to end up at Florida State. I also think LJ McCray could go anywhere. I have no idea. I don't think anybody knows for sure, but he's committed to Florida, and that's a weird deal there. I want no part of that guess. Florida State, or Auburn. My Auburn contact thinks they have a great chance. Whatever. I haven't heard anything specific on the Florida State end, but we'll see on LJ. They're probably going to get Amaris Williams at Auburn. He's a big-time defensive lineman, so maybe that helps Florida State with LJ. That's another thing to think about. Somebody else takes a spot, then somebody else goes to another school. Finally, with this, there are a lot of rumors about different kids. Somebody put in the chat earlier, Kai Bates. He's a young man that's going to end up allegedly looking at some other schools. Somebody posted, I haven't heard that, but there's always going to be things like that. And I have heard, I will be shocked if Blunt does not flip back to the University of Miami. Now, here's a couple other questions. Carla, Ohio State has elevated Brown to play in the Cotton Bowl. That was broadcast last week. That's true, but he's not proven. Very talented, and you're right. But I just, like, if you're Jeremiah, do you really care about that? He's not a proven quarterback. Now, if the kid goes out and balls, that's great, but Jeremiah will have already signed. So he doesn't know anything. I'm curious to see what Jeremiah does and if he comments about it on signing day or anytime after. Char Norvell and the university need to do whatever they have to get Ward, because with all the talent that's leaving, we need the best quarterback we can get, and we would be much better fit and a better player. I think he would be a tremendous fit in Norvell's scheme. Char's 100% right. Ward is a similar player in some ways to what Jordan Travis was. Doesn't actually take off all that much, but he might do a little bit more. They'd be better coach probably to do so with more parts around him. O-line, tight end, receiver, running back. Florida State's not going to be hurting at most of those spots. Maybe O-line. We'll figure that out. But yeah, I think he'd be a tremendous fit in Norvell's scheme. K-Jack. Supposedly Cam is done traveling, only taking in Zoom calls, but DJ said he's got to talk to his family. No visits right now. Yeah, I just think they're kind of trying to figure it out. I wonder if the two even talk. You know, why not? It's ironic they played against each other this year. Would Jeremiah Smith sign with Florida State given the playoff bowl berth slight? I don't think that has anything to do with it, Carla. Jeremiah is looking for development and fit. That's from face-to-face conversation. Like, he just wants to feel comfortable with who he's going to be coached by, wants to know they have guys around him, and he wants the best chance to make it to the NFL. Ray McCoy. Cam Ward does not practice to protect the ball. DJ has played in Clemson's offense from shotgun and Oregon State mostly in I formation. We can win doing both. DJ is a better fit for Florida State. You're the first person I've heard say that. I think Cam Ward is a far better fit because they're used to being in shotgun here. Recently, he makes plays with his feet and he can extend the plays even if you're not running RPO. Just my opinion. But I think DJ could do some pretty good things at Florida State as well, and also be a guy that, quite honestly, makes it happen for Florida State in a different way with the downfield throws. He's really good at downfield throws. His percentage is actually higher on passes that went 20 yards or more down the field than what Cam Ward's were. That's pretty impressive. Now, Oregon State's got a good scheme. Jonathan Smith can coach. No doubt about it. But that's still an interesting statistic, and it's factual. So I'm curious, now that's based on Pro Football Focus. Whether or not you agree with all their numbers is another take, but based on their numbers, that's what they have. That is fact. So I think Ward could do pretty well. I just don't know if DJ would be the guy in those really big games. I think that's the separator. I think Ward's mobility would help them more. Talking about Florida State. DJ is also a big body, can't be banged around too much. Yeah, Ray, that's the one thing. DJ is a huge dude. That is a big freaking quarterback. He's like Roethlisberger. That is a big guy. So got to take that into account. I believe I'm going to wrap it up here. I'm going to come back and do something tomorrow. If anything breaks, I might have another show. We'll see. But at the same time, it's been a lot of fun. Going to have another show probably tomorrow morning. We'll see. Again, I can't predict this stuff. It's pretty wild, but please hit that like button, hit that subscribe. Make sure you smash that notification bell and become an everydayer. We truly appreciate everybody that keeps coming in and asking questions. It's a lot of fun. So with that, everybody have a great day and take care.